Hi, my name's Linley. My family threw a lavish party for my brother in law's promotion, handed him the mic, clinked champagne, praised his rise. I stood near the kitchen, plating shrimp. What they didn't know was that I was the one who approved his promotion. And that wasn't even the worst part. The photo wall didn't have my name. The speech didn't mention me. And when my niece asked why I wasn't in the tribute video, no one had an answer. Was it a mistake? Or had I been erased on purpose, slowly, quietly, over years? That night, I didn't cry. I recorded what they said when they thought I wasn't listening. Do you know what it feels like to be edited out of your own family? Because I do, and this is what I did about it. When I stepped through the front door of my parents' house that Saturday afternoon, the air was thick with something that had nothing to do with the summer heat. It was the kind of tight, polished atmosphere you get when everyone's wearing smiles that don't touch their eyes and heels that click just a second too loud against marble tile. I brought a chilled bottle of wine, a Pinot that cost just enough to make me feel like I contributed. No one noticed it. I set it on the side table next to three other unopened bottles and moved toward the entry hall, where a laminated seating chart was displayed on an easel. I scanned the names, expecting nothing more than a quiet confirmation that I was forgotten again. But this time, it wasn't just oversight. It was insult wrapped in a typo. Ashton, male, it read. Table 9. Far corner, near the kitchen swing door. I blinked. A server noticed my pause and stepped forward, politely puzzled. Is everything all right? I'm not Ashton, I said, keeping my voice even. And I'm not male. Oh, let me double-check, she murmured, flipping a tablet. It does list Ashton here, but there's no other similar name. Right, because no one expected I'd actually show. She offered me a gentle smile, the kind reserved for people who didn't get what they wanted at restaurants. We can place you here, she pointed toward the back corner, until something opens up. I sat down next to a plastic fern. The tablecloth didn't reach all the way down on one side, and I could hear the clatter of pans behind the kitchen doors. A breeze of warm air whooshed out every time someone entered with a tray of appetizers. From where I sat, I had a direct view of the photo wall. A banner above it read, "The team behind the man," framed by professionally printed images of Colby shaking hands with board members, laughing beside my sister Isolde, standing triumphantly in front of a graph that I knew, because I'd built it, represented the division's growth last fiscal year. My picture wasn't there. Neither was my name. Isolde floated through the crowd in her pale blue sheath dress, like someone born to be applauded. Colby stood with his hand on her back, the model of suburban male success. People leaned in when he spoke. They tossed their heads back when he cracked a joke. I knew every file that had crossed his desk this year. I approved the restructuring that freed up his budget. And here I was, being slowly steamed in the corner like the green beans on the dinner menu. Glad you're here, sweetheart. My mother's voice caught me by surprise. She leaned down and kissed my cheek. We could use a hand plating shrimp, just for a bit. The caterers are slammed. I turned, blinking. I'm a guest. Of course you are, honey, she said with a smile. But you know how this family runs. Everyone pitches in. The room tilted slightly. Or maybe it was just my patience shifting underfoot. Just until the food's out, she added, brushing invisible lint from my shoulder. I followed her without arguing. That's the thing about being the youngest and least married. Your help is always assumed, never appreciated. The kitchen smelled of garlic butter and citrus glaze. A young man in a black apron handed me a pair of tongs and pointed at a tray of skewered shrimp. I started arranging them without saying a word. Somewhere out there, they were clinking glasses to Colby's incredible vision. I pressed a toothpick into each shrimp and thought about how vision only gets you so far without a team willing to clean up your messes. I'd been here before. Not in this exact house, maybe, but in this role, the helpful ghost who haunts family events. My birthdays as a kid came without cards. At age 9, I got a dollhouse with no front wall. Someone had picked it off a clearance shelf. At 16, no one showed to my dinner except a neighbor mom who thought I looked lonely that day. This was not new, but this was louder. The omissions were coordinated now, clean, like someone had walked through my place in the story with a highlighter, then a whiteout pen. I set down the tray and walked to the side of the room, pulling out my phone. They put me by the kitchen again, I texted Nadine. But today's different. She replied a few seconds later. Different how? I stared at the screen, thumb hovering, then typed, because I'm the one who signed Colby's promotion letter last month. For a moment, I let that sit there, truth in pixels. And in that moment, standing between the dishwasher and the wine fridge, I realized this wasn't an oversight. It was a message. That realization followed me through the rest of the house, especially when I reached the living room and saw it. Above the fireplace, perfectly centered and lit by the warm glow of recessed lighting, was a framed family photo I didn't know existed. The print was large, glossy, and expensive-looking, the kind of thing ordered through a boutique service, not Walgreens. Everyone was in it. My parents, Isolde and Colby, with their 2 kids, even Aunt Jo and her poodle, for God's sake. My sister stood front and center, Colby's arm around her waist, both of them glowing like they'd won something none of us were told about. Beneath the photo, a brass plate was engraved with the names Vera, Harlan, Isolde, Colby, Madison, Ethan. And then, nothing. No Linley. To the left of the plate was a second line in cursive, the Core 4. My name hadn't just been missed, it had been removed. My breath caught in my chest, and for a second, I thought maybe I was being dramatic. Maybe there was a second frame elsewhere with the rest of us. Extended family, cousins, the usual misfits. But no, this was the centerpiece. This was the statement. I stepped back, let out a soft breath through my nose, and turned, right into Isolde. She didn't even flinch. "Oh, hey, what do you think of the photo?" she asked, sipping her drink like nothing had happened. "Nice shot," I said, gesturing with the glass in my hand. "Just wondering if they forgot to engrave my name, or if I've been disowned quietly." She smiled, perfectly composed. "Oh, don't take it personally. It was a last-minute decision. We had to order it quickly to get it printed before the party." "Of course," I replied. "It's always a timeline issue." Her expression never changed. The kind of smile you'd expect from a PR manager diffusing a minor scandal, not a sister talking to her own blood. I walked past her slowly, heading toward the back of the room, where the shadows were thicker and the people less attentive. The door to the den was cracked, and for a moment, I considered slipping inside to breathe. But then I heard heels tapping behind me. "Don't sulk, sweetheart," my mother's voice called gently. "That's what happens when you skip family dinners. You fall out of the loop." She placed a warm hand on my arm, soft but anchored. "We've all been busy. You with your work, your schedule. We didn't know if you'd even come." "I sent an RSVP," I said, careful to keep my voice neutral. "Email, I think," she replied. "You know how Dad is with tech stuff." Vera gave me that look, half apology, half shrug, and drifted back toward her circle. The unspoken message landed harder than the photo ever could. "If you're not visible, we'll simply crop you out." I sat on the edge of the couch, pulled out my phone, and snapped a photo of the frame. Sent it to Nadine without context. She responded almost immediately. "They erased you like you're an ex-wife, not a daughter." I stared at her words, the kind that shouldn't hurt as much as they did, the kind that get under your ribs and stay there. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened my gallery and started scrolling back through other family moments. Photos from last Christmas, no tags. My last birthday, the group dinner I organized, no one posted. The family thread had skipped over it completely, not even a happy birthday text. Last year, they'd sent a generic e-card from a platform I'd used for work reminders. This wasn't forgetfulness. It was systematic, precise. They hadn't lost me. They had actively written me out. A subtle tightening in my jaw reminded me not to cry here. Not in this house, not in this moment. I didn't want them to see me break. I wanted them to see me look. Across the room, laughter echoed. Sharp, pointed. Isolde, of course. She was standing next to Colby now, showing him something on her phone. They both glanced in my direction, then away. I rose and walked slowly toward the mantel again. Not to challenge, just to see it one last time. As I stared into that polished frame, I saw not just a missing name. I saw the outline of the person they wanted to pretend I never was. That silence stayed with me, even as people clapped for a man who rewrote the story without me in it. By the time I reached the edge of the dining area, the mood had shifted from casual chatter to ceremonial hush. Colby stood near the head table, glass in hand, suit just wrinkled enough to appear charmingly overworked. Isolde glowed beside him like she always did in front of a crowd. Shoulders back, chin tilted, one hand resting softly against his arm, like a trophy that clapped. "Can I get everyone's attention?" Colby tapped his glass. The room responded immediately, like muscle memory. People turned, smiling, expectant. My hand still clutched a glass of wine I hadn't tasted. "I want to take a minute to thank all of you," Colby began, voice deep and rehearsed. "It's been a long road, and I couldn't have made it here without some truly brilliant people behind the scenes." I already knew where this was going, but I still listened. From the marketing folks who rebranded our image, to the legal team who pulled off that merger paperwork in record time, and especially the strategic minds upstairs. He gestured toward a corner, where my department rival, Ken Whitmore, stood grinning. "You've all been part of this success." The room applauded. I didn't. No mention of HR. No mention of compliance. No mention of me. Even though it was my initials at the bottom of the decision form. Even though I stayed late 3 nights reviewing his eligibility file, double-checking the metrics, redlining the ethics clause until it passed. He didn't forget. He chose. A woman standing next to me, someone from Colby's department. I didn't know her name. Leaned closer and whispered, "Didn't you help get him that job?" I glanced at her, smiled faintly, and nodded once. She seemed surprised, then awkward. She turned away. A few chairs over, my cousin Anthony chuckled as he whispered to another relative, "Guess it's all who you know these days." The two of them laughed like it was a sitcom. No one noticed me. That wasn't new. But what struck me wasn't the erasure. It was the comfort with which everyone accepted it. Colby continued, giving Isolde credit for being his anchor and vision partner. She beamed. Their kids were ushered to the front for a photo. Somewhere in the middle of all that, I slipped back toward the hallway, my skin buzzing with something not quite rage, but close enough. Near the coat closet, I leaned against the wall and let my mind float backward to the night I signed his promotion. I remember it clearly because I almost didn't. There had been a note in his file. An old warning, nothing major, but enough to raise an eyebrow. I flagged it, brought it up to my supervisor. "He's golden boy material," my boss had said. "Don't overthink it." So I didn't. I put my name on it. Rubber-stamped the success I wasn't even allowed to acknowledge tonight. My phone buzzed. "Nadine, you hearing this?" "Yeah," I typed back. I'm watching my effort become someone else's anecdote. There was no anger in me. Just this cold, clinical awareness that what had happened wasn't personal. It was patterned. This was how they moved. Omit. Overlook. Overwrite. "Linley?" The screen blinked. Nadine was still typing. "You okay?" I typed, then deleted, then typed again. They didn't forget me. They never intended to include me. It wasn't just tonight. It was every time someone else got the credit because I didn't ask for it loud enough. Because I didn't have a husband standing beside me, or a kid to pull into a photo. Because I worked quietly, and they knew I wouldn't make a scene. Until maybe now. I slipped my phone into my bag and walked back toward the dining room just as the applause died down. The room relaxed into clinks and low murmurs. Plates were being cleared. Dessert was starting, and when the laughter died down, I felt the silence settle right behind my ribs, not one of absence, but of deliberate removal. That smile followed me into the kitchen, where another small erasure waited to happen. I passed by a table where the dessert trays were being arranged, caterers moving like clockwork, platters of lemon tarts and chocolate-dipped strawberries spinning under perfect lighting. I wasn't hungry, but I hovered near the espresso station, half for the illusion of purpose, half to avoid drifting back into the crowd. And that's when I heard it. Isolde's voice, clear and delicate, like someone narrating a commercial. You know, Colby's rise was all about his grit, she told a woman in pearls I didn't recognize. Some people just know how to build others. There was a chuckle, light agreement, the clink of a glass. I didn't flinch, not outwardly. That wasn't a compliment. It was choreography, a line rehearsed and delivered with the precision of someone who knew which version of the story would survive. And the part where I had approved his promotion, scrubbed out like an old memo. I stepped forward, my voice low but steady. Funny, I said. I thought HR played a small part, too. Isolde didn't even blink. She turned toward me, smiling as if I'd made a cute joke at dinner. Oh, I'm sure they did their job, she said smoothly, then added, every ladder needs sturdy rungs. My smile didn't reach my eyes. Glad I could be structural. Before either of us could say more, Vera approached, ever the conductor arriving to adjust the tempo. Isolde always had the touch, she said, with the kind of softness that cuts deeper than anything sharp. Colby's lucky, truly. Then, placing a hand lightly on my back, she added, not everyone is meant for the spotlight. There's beauty in the background, you know. It was meant to soothe, to coat the rejection in syrup. And if I hadn't already lived a life under these polished dismissals, I might have thanked her for the observation. Instead, I just nodded. Guess someone has to hold the light. Vera didn't notice the sarcasm, or she pretended not to. They floated away together, twin queens on a ballroom floor of passive aggression. I stood there, the leftover guest with nothing but bitter coffee and a shrinking radius of relevance. I stepped away, pulled out my phone, and texted Nadine. Is it me? Or do they keep complimenting me into irrelevance? The reply came instantly. That's not a compliment. That's weaponized sweetness. I stared at the screen for a long second, then locked it and looked back at the dessert table. The way the mini cheesecakes were stacked made me irrationally angry. Perfect. Identical. Replaceable. I walked out through the back sliding doors into the evening air. The sun was almost gone, casting long streaks of orange across the yard. From here, the house looked like something out of a catalog, groomed bushes, twinkling patio lights, not a thing out of place. Except me. I stood near the fence, the cold from the wine glass finally seeping into my skin. They know exactly what they're doing. That was the thought that wouldn't leave. They don't exclude me to hurt me. They include me to shrink me. It wasn't enough to push me out. They needed me visible but silent, present but blurred. Just enough to point to when someone asked where I'd gone, but not enough to make anyone remember why I mattered. I turned to head back inside, pausing just before the door. That's when I saw her. Through the kitchen window, my mother stood by the sink, holding a glass of white wine. Her smile was soft, calm, almost angelic. But it wasn't meant for warmth. It was the kind of smile designed to disarm. A smile that made you doubt if anything hurt at all. And just as I turned to go back inside, I caught my mother's smile through the window. Soft, serene, and designed to make me doubt myself. That silence followed me out into the garden, where my niece's question caught me entirely off guard. I didn't answer her right away, just smiled, tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear, and sent her running off to her cousins with a promise of s'mores later. I wasn't in the mood for more conversation, but the party had thinned, and as I wandered back toward the bar counter near the garden doors, I realized the night had settled into its second act. The real filters were coming off. Half-finished drinks in hand, guests now talked with the looseness of people no longer performing. I heard the laugh before I caught the words. Isolde's friend, Monica, I think, stood in a small circle by the marble-topped bar, glass of rosé in hand, her voice a little too loud. Honestly, she said, grinning wide, Isolde always said HR just pushes paper. Colby earned this. He's the one in the trenches. Laughter. The kind that sounds like agreement, even if no one fully means it. I didn't move. I just stood there long enough for it to burn. I didn't care that Monica wasn't trying to be cruel. What stung was that this wasn't a slip. It was a summary. Something rehearsed and repeated. Not just a joke, a belief. I walked forward. Glad HR's paperwork helped Colby get his promotion then, I said calmly. Monica blinked. Oh, Linley, didn't see you there. She chuckled, raising her glass slightly. Just teasing, you know how sisters are. Sure, I said, turning before she could say anything else. I know exactly how sisters are. I didn't wait for a reply. I walked away, not fast, not slow, just enough to make the point. I kept walking until I found the hallway bathroom and closed the door behind me. The mirror caught me first. Smudged eyeliner, hair looser than when I arrived. I looked tired, but that wasn't what stopped me. It was the expression, not broken, not angry, just done. My mind slipped backward to a moment 2 years ago, when I put in a recommendation for Isolde to lead a regional nonprofit campaign. She had been thrilled, told everyone she had a lead, then went silent. She never followed up, never mentioned my name again when the article came out. It wasn't just that they took from me. It was how easily they moved on afterward. Like the theft wasn't even worth denying. My phone buzzed in my palm. Nadine. Voice note. You've got the facts. Stop waiting for their kindness. Use your name. Use your work. I closed my eyes, replayed her voice once more. It was her clarity I needed. Not her approval, just her lens. I stepped out of the bathroom with a kind of energy I hadn't felt in months. Crossed the hallway, found Isolde near the back porch with Colby, sipping something clear from a short glass. I didn't wait for her to look surprised. I didn't raise my voice. If you ever speak about my work again, I said plainly, say the truth, or say nothing. She blinked, then let out a quick, practiced laugh. Come on, Linley, don't be like that. I was already walking away. Behind me, I heard the glass set down harder than intended. It made a sharp clink that cut through the murmur of voices. No one followed. No one called after me. The only sound that followed me was the awkward clink of someone setting down their wineglass too hard. A silence born of someone being seen. The only sound that followed me was the awkward clink of someone setting down their wineglass too hard. A silence born of someone being seen. I didn't stay to absorb it. I stepped past the patio doors and into the garden again, grateful for the sudden quiet. The party had begun to soften, dissolve into little pockets of conversation under string lights. Dessert plates balanced on one hand, wine glasses in the other. I spotted my niece near the stone fountain. She had kicked off her shoes and was dancing around the edge like it was a stage. She looked up and saw me. Dee Dee! She called out, bounding over and throwing her arms around my waist. I knelt to meet her, holding her close, breathing in the faint scent of sunscreen and sugar. She leaned back, eyes wide and honest, in a way only children can be. Why weren't you in the big video with Mommy and Uncle Colby? I didn't answer. I hugged her again, tighter this time. My chest burned like I'd swallowed heat. The question didn't come from cruelty. It came from noticing, and that somehow hurt worse. Isolde was standing just a few feet away, watching with her wineglass half raised. When our eyes met, she gave a small shrug and said, Kids always ask the weirdest things, don't they? Then she turned and walked off like it was nothing. It wasn't nothing. It was a mask slipping. I stood, brushing the grass from my dress, and followed the string of voices and laughter back inside. By now the lights had dimmed further, and the party had turned cozy, smaller, lazier, the kind of environment where everyone assumes no one's paying attention anymore. That's when I saw the post. Someone had tagged me in a photo. It was from earlier, taken in front of the decorative backdrop Isolde had arranged. The caption read, "Couldn't have done it without the whole team. Some real stars, some background brilliance." I stared at the image. Isolde and Colby, front and center. Me, just barely visible at the edge, blurry, holding a tray. I was tagged, yes, but not named, used. For completeness, like a diversity hire on a pamphlet. The kind of visibility that confirms you're part of the furniture. I sat on the edge of the hallway bench and opened my phone's gallery. Scroll, click, tap, past photos of team meetings, old birthday texts that never came, screenshots of Colby's ethics waiver, and then I found it. The email, dated 6 weeks ago. My signature, confirming the final approval of Colby's promotion. I read it 3 times, not because I didn't believe it was real, but because I needed to feel its weight again. This wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming what was mine before they tried to rewrite it. I stood, moved quietly through the foyer, and exited out the side door. No one noticed. That was their habit. My car was parked under the soft buzz of a street lamp. I climbed in, locked the doors, and sat still. I opened the HR compliance portal on my phone, drafted a memo to myself, outlining timeline irregularities and patterns of internal misrepresentation. Then I forwarded the signed promotion document to my encrypted personal drive. Title: Proof Not Forgettable.pdf. One last thing. I opened a text to Nadine. I'm not waiting for fairness anymore. She didn't respond right away. She didn't need to. I placed the phone face down on the console and let my fingers rest over the steering wheel. No music, no engine. When I finally stepped out of that car, I wasn't looking back for permission. I was looking forward for proof. The house was dimmer now, shadows curling into corners, while conversation lingered in low tones over half-empty glasses. I re-entered quietly through the side door, intending to grab my coat from the den. My plan was to slip out without another round of polite dismissal. I didn't make it. Just before the turn into the back hallway, I paused near the butler's pantry, hearing a voice I could pick out even through layers of drywall in denial. "She's getting bold again," Isolde said, her voice sharper than the wine she swirled. "If we're not careful, she'll make it all about her, like always." I froze. Vera responded, cool and clipped. "Then remind her who's the real family, not just the signature on paper." A beat of silence followed. It was the kind of pause that comes when something cruel has landed perfectly. They didn't know I was there. And yet the words struck with intention, as though part of them hoped I would hear. I didn't breathe. I just stood still as each syllable settled over me like frost. It was never just about being forgotten. It was about being removed, strategically, deliberately, like I was a blemish on their carefully curated family story. I backed away, slow and steady, pulling out my phone without thinking. I'd already tapped record. I didn't remember doing it. But the app was open, red dot glowing, capturing every word. Back in my car, I listened to it again. Every sentence crisp, every note undeniable. "She's getting bold again. Remind her who's the real family." I titled the file, Undeniable. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just sat in silence as something inside me hardened. Not into hatred, but into clarity. I forwarded the audio to Nadine with a one-line message. Document it. Time-stamped, legal lock. My phone buzzed 5 seconds later. Nadine, your sister's been working angles for years. Now you have evidence. Now you move. Move! The words settled in my chest like a key turning. I stepped out of the car and walked back toward the house, not sneaking, not soft. I walked like someone who had stopped apologizing for being seen. Inside, the lights were warmer, the conversations more languid. People no longer noticed when I entered a room, and that suited me just fine tonight. I found Vera first. She was pouring herself another drink, glass clinking against the bottleneck. Our eyes met. She stiffened. Then Isolde appeared beside her, face flushed from wine and entitlement. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't gesture. "You erased the wrong woman," I said. Neither of them responded right away. Vera blinked first. Isolde opened her mouth, then closed it again, and I walked away. I didn't need the mic to be heard anymore. I had the truth, and soon they'd all hear it too. By the time I came back inside, the music had dipped into soft jazz, and the air had taken on that familiar afterglow of a party nearing its end. People clustered in smaller groups now, laughing over melted ice in their drinks, balancing dessert plates, whispering things they wouldn't say earlier. It was the hour when facades loosened but still hadn't fallen. I was walking toward the hallway when someone near the bar raised a glass in my direction and joked, "We never heard from the real MVP, HR lady." The room chuckled lightly, unsure if they were allowed to laugh. I froze for half a second, glass in hand. Then someone I barely knew nudged me gently forward, handing me a fresh drink like they were passing me a mic I never asked for. For a beat, I thought about letting it pass. But then I remembered the audio clip still sitting in my phone, the emails, the photo, the way they'd sculpted a version of the truth that looked polished from every angle but mine. So I stepped forward. I stood near the same fireplace where the family portrait had first sent a quiet signal to my chest. I held up my glass, and slowly the room turned. "I know it's been a long night," I began, my tone even, "but before the night ends, I just want to say thank you for the wine, the shrimp, the beautifully staged applause. A few chuckles, more awkward than amused. And it's been an honor," I added, "watching someone I once signed off on soar to new heights." Now the room shifted. Isolde's smile dropped half a shade. Colby, a few feet away, tilted his head just slightly. I felt their eyes tighten, not in surprise, but calculation. "You learn a lot," I continued, "when your name gets left out of things. When you realize silence doesn't mean you were forgotten. It means someone decided you didn't matter enough to include." A breath held. I reached into my purse, pulled out my phone, and tapped play. Just 10 seconds. Just enough. "She's getting bold again. If we're not careful, she'll make it all about her, like always." "Then remind her who's the real family, not just the signature on paper." The voices of Isolde and Vera. The room went silent, not in confusion, but clarity. The clip was short, precise, and clean. No accusations, just proof. I locked my phone and placed it gently on the mantel. "I suppose the truest measure of leadership," I said calmly, "is what people say when they think you've stepped out of the room." Then I lifted my glass. To the truth, quiet, patient, and waiting for the right moment. No one clapped at first. Vera stood completely still, fingers gripping her stemware. Isolde's face flushed a deep shade of something between rage and embarrassment. Colby looked away. Then, from near the doorway, Nadine gave one soft nod, mouthed, "That's how you do it." A few polite claps followed, unsure and slow. Most people just stared. I set my glass down, straightened my shoulders, and walked across the room without looking back. My father stood near the window, holding a drink. He didn't say anything as I passed. Didn't blink. Just watched me go. I didn't wait for a reaction. I didn't need one. I didn't turn around, because some silences are more powerful when you let them echo. By the next morning, silence had turned into ripples, and they were spreading fast. I woke to 3 missed calls from Dad, one from Isolde, and a text thread blinking like an alarm. "What did you do?" "You humiliated her." "This is family, Lindley. Why now?" I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Instead, I sat on the edge of my bed, the weight of the previous night settling in, not like regret, but like exhale. A stillness I hadn't felt in years. I opened my laptop. There, in my inbox, sat a message from the HR director. Subject: Compliance Follow-Up Body. "We've reviewed the documentation you submitted. Your concerns were valid. Thank you for flagging." Attached was a notice. Colby's role was being placed under temporary review. His onboarding bonus was frozen pending further review of his conduct and internal ethics compliance. My hands didn't shake with fear. They shook with release. All those years of swallowing back discomfort, of watching Isolde recast events and call it strategy, of hearing Dad excuse it because family keeps peace, they were melting into something new, not revenge, not triumph, just truth. Then the phone buzzed again. Isolde. I let it ring until voicemail picked up. A minute later, it came as a text. Didn't expect you to stoop to this. Thought we were better than public spectacle. I texted back. You expected I'd stay silent. No response. But a few minutes later, Vera sent a paragraph, almost too long to read in one breath. I know things were said in frustration. This family has always had its flaws, but we handle things quietly with dignity. I hope you'll think about what this is doing to our name. She never once used the word sorry, just our name. I scrolled back up and reread the phrase, with dignity. If dignity meant being erased while applauding them, they could keep it. Then another buzz, this time from Dad. I almost ignored it. But I answered. His voice came slow, heavier than I remembered. I didn't know, Linley. Not all of it. I should have asked sooner. I didn't flinch. I didn't need you to know, I said calmly. I needed you to see. He sighed. I see it now. That didn't fix anything, but it didn't have to. That afternoon, as I packed up my laptop and grabbed a coffee near the office, Nadine called. You know this is going to get bigger, right? She said. People are sharing the clip. There's talk around Colby's exit. More than one team flagged it after last night. Let it ripple, I told her. They've had years to build their version of me. Now I get to write mine. I stepped into the HR lobby without looking over my shoulder. Not hidden, not quiet, not erased. They had years to build their version of me. Now I was rewriting the ending. 2 mornings after the toast, I sat in my apartment with the blinds drawn halfway, the early sun pooling against the floor, like an intruder, unsure if it was welcome. The air was quiet, but not calm. The kind of stillness that comes after a windstorm, when leaves are scattered, but nothing's fallen. My phone buzzed. A link from Nadine. Just 3 words in her message. You're in it. I clicked. The headline on the anonymous industry blog read, When Family Becomes the PR Machine. Below it, sources confirm internal conflict at a mid-tier corporation's leadership level, sparked by a now viral clip revealing ethical discrepancies in internal promotions. No names, no direct quotes. But everyone who mattered knew exactly who it was about. The video, the audio, the sudden silence in the middle of the toast. It had all come together like pieces in a puzzle they thought I was too polite to complete. I scrolled past the comments. Most of them supportive. A few questioned motives. One even asked, why are women always called difficult when they finally say something? I didn't reply. I didn't need to. But the texts came anyway. Isolde posted something vague, her specialty. Betrayal always wears familiar shoes. Followed by a soft photo of her and Colby holding hands on their porch. Vera, ever diplomatic, called it a family misunderstanding taken out of context. Her post featured lilies on a table and the quote, Strong families weather storms with grace. Harlan said nothing. And somehow that said the most. No defense, no denial, just absence. My work inbox pinged. Subject, formal response, optional message. We understand if you wish to release a statement. Should you choose to pursue a formal complaint, we will back your documentation. Let us know your preference. I stared at the screen, and then I closed it. I didn't need more blood. I just needed clarity. When Nadine called later that afternoon, her voice was gentle. You're handling this better than most executives I've ever worked with. I've had practice, I said. Being ignored trains you to move without waiting for applause. She laughed. Sometimes silence is the loudest legacy. That sentence stayed with me. The next day, I got a LinkedIn message from a recruiter based in New York. It was short, but specific. Saw how you handled a sensitive situation with poise. Let's talk. We talked. They offered. A role with influence. A team that knew my name. A city where no one could rewrite me into the wallpaper. But I didn't jump right away. I sat with it. Sat with the weight of what leaving meant. Not for them, but for me. That night, I drafted a message to the family group thread. Just a simple line. I'm not asking for anything. I'm simply stating that I see you now. Clearly. I hovered over send. And then I deleted it. Instead, the next morning, I walked into HR with my coffee still warm in my hand. I nodded to the assistant at the front, who smiled nervously, already knowing. In the meeting room, I sat down across from the director and said, I'm ready for my next project. Sometimes, seeing your own reflection in someone else's silence is enough to change everything. A week had passed since the party, but the fallout still echoed like a slow-moving current. That morning, I sat on my balcony, legs tucked under me, a lukewarm cup of coffee beside my phone, lit up with unread messages. Isolde's name appeared 3 times. Vera's, 6. Missed calls, voicemails. One text read, "Can we just talk like family again?" I didn't reply. Not because I was angry, because I wasn't anymore. I scrolled through them without flinching, then locked the screen and placed the phone face down on the table. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel the pull to respond. I didn't need to be right in their eyes anymore. I just needed to be free in mine. Later that morning, I checked my voicemail. Harlan's voice played softly over the speaker, more raw than I'd ever heard it. "You've done what none of us were brave enough to do," he said. "I'm not proud of that, but I see it now." I saved the message. Didn't return it. It wasn't closure, but it wasn't an open wound either. It was just something human. And that was enough. Nadine and I met at a cafe tucked behind a bookstore downtown. She was already waiting with 2 black coffees and a croissant torn neatly in half. We didn't hug. We didn't need to. There are friendships where you skip the pleasantries because the presence is the point. "You did it," she said, stirring her drink. I didn't scream, I answered. Didn't throw a scene. Didn't hit back. That's the part that scared them. I sipped my coffee. I didn't want revenge. I wanted to stop being erased. She smiled. "You did both." We didn't linger on the topic, just let it settle between us as we watched people pass by outside, laughing, tapping their phones, living their lives. On my way home, I passed a photo frame store. In the display window was a black and white image of a family, posed in a living room almost identical to ours growing up. It wasn't the resemblance that stopped me. It was the girl at the edge of the frame, half cut off, arms awkwardly folded. That had been me for years, smiling in the margins. Back at my apartment, I walked past an old photo of my mother. She sat with all of us on the porch, Vera and Harlan young and trying, Isolde smiling like she already knew where she belonged, and me, smaller, quieter, staring somewhere off frame. I didn't feel like an outsider anymore, just someone who survived, someone who finally got to name the distance for what it was. Necessary. That afternoon, I opened my laptop and pulled up the relocation documents the recruiter had sent. Job offer accepted. Relocation assistance confirmed. Start date flexible, but preferably early next month. I opened a blank document and updated my resume, adjusted the formatting, removed the corporate phrases I'd once used to hide my voice. I added one line under professional experience, led and resolved internal ethics breach with discretion and strategic clarity. A notification popped up. Email from HR. Subject, final confirmation, body. We'd be honored to have your leadership in the new role. I smiled, typed back. Then let's build something that remembers everyone who made it happen. I closed my laptop gently. Let the weight of it settle against the quiet. I wasn't burning bridges. I was just done pretending they were ever built to carry me. A month later, I stood outside the Charlotte courthouse in a tailored navy blazer, holding a folder that weighed far more than its pages should. The sky was pale and still, like it hadn't decided if it would rain or shine. Inside, behind those glass doors, the boardroom was waiting. The closed-door mediation didn't take long. It didn't need to. I presented the email thread, the one Colby never thought anyone would save. Messages outlining his plan to leverage the promotion for a lateral jump into a competitor firm once his stock options matured. Strategic timing. Selfish gain. The board listened quietly. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't smear his name. I just let the documents speak. Within 45 minutes, the decision came down. Colby's promotion rescinded, his bonuses suspended retroactively. He'd be reassigned pending ethics training and review. I didn't stay to watch him be notified. Justice didn't need an audience, just a paper trail. Later that afternoon, I pulled into my parents' driveway one last time. I hadn't called ahead. I didn't plan to stay. Vera opened the door, wearing a cream sweater, pearls still clinging to her neck like they belonged there more than she did. I wasn't expecting— "I won't stay long," I said, stepping past her into the kitchen. I placed a white envelope on the table. "These are all the photos of me you packed away. I figured you forgot where you put them." She said nothing, just watched. I didn't linger, didn't ask if she'd open it. I just walked out, leaving the door open behind me. That evening, I stopped at the post office and mailed a certified letter to Isolde. Inside were two things: a printed transcript of the recorded conversation she didn't know I had, and a sealed copy of the HR compliance report. On top, a yellow sticky note. "I learned silence from you. I learned voice on my own." I didn't expect her to respond. That wasn't the point. There was no dramatic final conversation. No shouting, no tears, just paperwork and closure. 2 days later, I boarded a one-way flight to New York. The gate was quiet, early morning calm. Nadine had texted before I left. "You did more than win. You changed the room." As I buckled into my seat, I looked out at the tarmac and felt something shift. Not grief, not triumph. Just room. Room to become. When the plane landed, the city greeted me with a muted gray skyline and the kind of energy that buzzed beneath everything, even silence. I stepped into my new apartment with just 2 suitcases and one clear intention. Nothing from them would follow me unless I let it. I unpacked the framed email first, the signed approval of Colby's promotion, the very one he tried to bury under gratitude for others. I didn't hang it to remember him. I hung it to remember me. Later that week, on my first day at the new office, I walked down Fifth Avenue in a wool coat too warm for March, my career bag swinging against my hip. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was trying to catch up to anything. I didn't burn the house down. I simply walked out and took the blueprint with me. Some stories aren't rewritten. They're reclaimed, one truth at a time. Maybe the hardest part of breaking free isn't the leaving. It's realizing you were never truly invited to stay. For years, I mistook silence for grace, compliance for loyalty, and being sidelined for being loved. But I've learned that there's nothing noble about shrinking to fit a version of yourself that makes others comfortable. If you're watching this, maybe you've been in a room where your name was skipped. Maybe you've watched someone else get praised for work you poured your soul into. Or maybe, like me, you were told family means forgiveness, even if you're the only one who keeps bleeding. Let me say this clearly: you have the right to take up space. You have the right to correct the story. And sometimes, peace isn't in the apology you'll never get. It's in choosing to walk away and not carry the weight of their expectations anymore. So what about you? Have you ever had to reclaim your voice? Have you ever chosen truth over tradition? I'd love to hear your story. If this video touched your heart or reminded you of something you've lived through, drop a 1 in the comments or tell me where you're watching from. If it didn't land with you, I want to hear that too. What would you have done differently? And if you're someone who values stories that dig deep and leave a mark, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what's next. Because sometimes the quietest voices carry the truth the furthest.